Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm your host, and this is another episode of Walking the Fairways. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic. As you know, we've got Dint Golf Solutions on board with Walking the Fairways, partnering with them. So I've got Adam Dinty with me. G'day, Adam. How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very well, mate. Now, it's a big weekend coming up for a fantastic rebuilding of a golf course here in Sydney, and that is the one and only Royal Sydney Gil Hanse redesign that is very, very soon to open. And you guys have been involved in the course fit-out of all the hardware out there on the golf course. Tell us about what you've been up to.
Yeah, mate, it's been a great project. I've been working with Adam quite closely, and apart from all the obvious stuff that you supply for course furniture and course hardware, like the flags, the sticks, the cups, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
We've done a lot of stuff in bronze using our bronze T signs and bronze T plaques.
Oh, that's a cool touch. I like that.
Mate, absolutely. And what they've done, which is really cool, is they've used the Melaleuca trees that they cut down to make tee markers. So they've made these absolutely beautiful tee markers, which we've inserted the bronze plaques into and painted them to signify the colour. And they look outstanding.
That is such a great touch. And what a great way to continue the theming of the golf course. Some of the old, bringing into some of the new styles and recycling stuff to create new hardware and beautiful. It sounds it's such a unique thing that's going to be part of the new golf course. Oh, this is exciting.
Absolutely, mate. And the flags, they've gone some traditional style flags, which look great. They've actually got a different cotton polyester fabric that we're using for them. And they're going to be numbered 1 to 18, which is something you don't see much anymore.
Mate, that's brilliant. Really exciting stuff. I look forward to being able to share that when it comes out, mate. I'm sure you guys will be putting out some photos and we'll be able to share that around.
Awesome, mate.
Now, a couple of things here. Let's talk about, this is the cool part that you guys are doing within the industry. Mate, you've got a footy tipping competition that I did announce once before in the podcast when we first got on board the partnership. Mate, can you give us an update of who's leading the AFL and the NRL tournaments there in your footy tipping?
Yeah, mate. Our footy tipping comp seems to be growing bigger each year, which is fantastic, which we like to see. So we've got AFL and NRL.
Yep.
So for AFL, we've got Royal Hobart Golf Course, who are in the lead.
Oh.
So they're closely followed by Marrie Park in WA and Griffith in New South Wales.
Brilliant.
And then for our NRL, we've got Carpentaria Golf Course.
Wow, okay, up in Queensland. Yes.
And then they've got Twin Creeks and Port Adelaide Council sitting in third place.
Fantastic. Look at this. This is great. I love this stuff. So I hope for all the teams out there listening, it's good to keep a leaderboard flow here, and we'll keep this in check as we go along, mate. This is a brilliant touch and a bit of fun involved in the industry, mate. Well done to yourself and to Dint Golf Solutions, mate. It's a great way to engage the greenkeeping industry.
Thanks, Steve.
And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to check out Dint Golf Solutions at their website, dint.com.au. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Walking the Fairways is also brought to you by Colin Campbell Chemicals. Colin Campbell Chemicals is a 100% Australian-owned company that's been going for 85 years strong. They offer a wide range of plant protection products to help keep your turf safe. And news from Colin Campbell Chemicals is that they have just released their new product, Chino, which is a fantastic new product to the industry for the control of Pythium. Nadeem and Colin Campbell Chemicals are also big on educating the industry, and one of the things that they do, along with our partnership here on the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, is they have their own podcast called Behind the Turf Podcast. Go and check it out. It's available on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, Podbean, and Audible, just to name a few. And also check out their website for all their plant protection products, including the new Chino product and Behind the Turf podcast at campbellchemicals.com.au. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, this is episode number 115. We quickly start off in the ACT, and we're going to go straight to Yowani Country Club and the new golf course works that are starting to really show signs of just what the new course will be all about. If you haven't heard before, you may not remember, Yowani is going through a full golf course rebuild. They sold some land off, which was at the location of their clubhouse, their car park, and along the main highway entry there into Canberra. And part of that is full golf course rerouting. The whole golf course is changed and completely different. There's a full new clubhouse going on. It's been moved to a different location. This is a big deal in the nation's capital of Canberra. Now, in particular, the stuff that I'm seeing information about is the 18th hole, which is looking rather impressive. Now, the 18th at Yowani is a breakaway from the very common that we often see long tough par 4 to finish. Well, the 18th at Yowani is going to be very different indeed. It's going to be a short par 4, pushing towards a maximum of not quite 300 metres. So a very interesting take here, and the design work of the whole golf course is done by Ben Davey and Contour Golf. Now this par 4 18th, this short par 4 18th, looks absolutely fantastic, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you. So have a look on the socials, because a little while after I post this podcast episode, I'm going to be putting up some images that relate to bits and pieces of this podcast, so you can go and check it out. And I've got a photo of the 18th hole here, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to describe the hole to you, and I really like what this 18th hole is going to be. So, as I mentioned, not quite 300 metres from the back tees. Quite a short par 4. There is water all the way down the left-hand side of the hole from tee to green. But picture this. The tee is up against the water on the edge, and the green is up against the water. So both the tee and the green have water right on the left-hand edge, and the fairway is out to the right, away from the water, even though the left edge of the fairway sort of runs up against, but all the room is out to the right. So if you don't want to take the green on from the tee, if you're not that long, there's plenty of room to leave your ball out to the right-hand side of the direct line from tee to green, and there's plenty of space to hit your ball. But what that does is it really gives you something challenging with your approach shot to the green itself. Right, so you hit your tee shot in the safe area out to the right in the fairway. Now you're playing back to the green that's right up against the edge of the water. So you're hitting almost towards the water, so you can't go long for the green. It's really unusual. So the green is a long, skinny green. It runs parallel with the water, and there are bunkers on the front right of the green and a bunker at the back left. So the further right, away from the water you hit your tee shot to a safe area, in inverted commas, the more the front right bunker comes into play on your approach that you'll have to hit over. And of course, then the back left bunker and water now come into play on the other side that you'll have to stop it from. Now, this is absolute genius from Ben Davey at Contour Golf. Like I mentioned, golf course architect Ben Davey. It is going to be a really, really fantastic golf hole to finish on, with so many choices of which way you want to go on this hole. Now, the new clubhouse is being built right behind this green, and I can tell you it will be an incredible place to watch the final hole, and how many different ways you're going to see everyone tackle this short par 4 to finish and either make or completely capitulate their round. It's going to be it. So have a look on the socials, because I'm going to have these images up, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. So really exciting stuff coming from Yowani, and it's starting to really take shape, and we're starting to see a lot more of how it's going to look, and in turn how it will play. Now, there's a bit of information coming out of Royal Canberra Golf Club, and they have now completed their fairway conversion of grass on their back holes from bent grass fairways to the new Santa Ana Cooch fairways. That's what they'd done last year with their front nine. Now the back nine has been done. Now this will make all of the Westbourne course, which is holes 1 to 18, all Santa Ana Cooch fairways. Now, in case you're not sure, Royal Canberra has 27 golf holes, but it's 1 to 18, which is a Westbourne course, in inverted commas, the course that they play the championship tournaments on, for example. It's a big win here for Royal Canberra and Superintendent Ryan Stuesser and the entire team on course at Royal Canberra. Lots of improvements here, and Santa Ana is going to change the game for the golf club, in my opinion. I'm going to have to get Ryan back on the podcast for a bit of a chat here, so we can hear specifically from Ryan just a little bit more in the detail of how it's all been going down there on course. But really exciting stuff that's happened at Royal Canberra, and they're continuing to improve their golf course down there at the wonderful, wonderful golf course of Royal Canberra. Now we go not far away from Royal Canberra, but still in the nation's capital, to Federal Golf Club, and they've been continuing with more bunker works on course as part of their course enhancement plan by design duo Crafter Mogford. That's Neil Crafter and Paul Mogford. They have done a course enhancement plan, and they're slowly ticking through some of the, I'd say, easier stuff to get on with down on course there at Federal. So there's a few bunkers happening. They've engaged friend of the podcast, Nathan Bradbury and Golf Spectrum, to do the construction works on course. And I've had Nathan on here before, and he's a fantastic individual, does a great lot of work wherever he goes and the works on course that he's doing. Great stuff happening down at Federal Golf Club, and Superintendent Pete Dunn is all over it, making sure all these new works grow in well indeed. So really exciting stuff again down there in the nation's capital, this time at Federal Golf Club. Now it's time to do something different up in Queensland, the Sunshine State, because I got some information that I stumbled across. To be honest, it was actually on social media, and it's in a regional part, and I say regional, this is far from the coastline. We're into the far southwestern corner of Queensland, which it's so far from, say, Brisbane, it's nearly closer to Adelaide. Is that how far away it is? It's in a very unique part of the country. It's in a township called Thargomindah, and I've got with me, joining me to talk about a project of rejuvenation of a 9-hole golf course at Thargomindah, and that is someone that some of you may have heard of, some of may not, but it's Dave Mason from Gen 1 Sports Turf. G'day, Dave.
G'day, Steve. How are you?
Mate, I'm well, thank you. Now, mate, just briefly, some people know your name, and I'd heard it before, but I was trying to put two and two together to see if it was the same person, because like Steve Smith, sometimes there's a couple of us. Mate, where might have people heard your name from before?
Yeah, Steve, I've been in the industry about 30 years now.
Is that all?
Yeah. So, I was most recently at Brisbane Golf Club
there you go.
for a few years. And prior to that was Metropolitan Golf Club as the course superintendent, which is where I spent 17 years of my career. So, yeah, I have been around for a little bit, and it's a far cry doing this project to what I'm used to, but it's kind of scratching an itch for me, so which is really good.
Very good, mate. Now, this is an interesting project. Now, let me just we'll just firstly start off with, it's Gen 1 Sports Turf is your business, and you're doing a project here to rejuvenate the 9-hole golf course at Thargomindah, rebuild essentially the 9-hole golf course with the Bulu Shire Council. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm project managing the Bulu Shire. They contacted me after I was out here last year visiting, and actually as a tourist, and we went out to the golf course and couldn't play it because it was in that state of unplayable at the time. So that just, they see the importance of not only sport for their own community. I mean, we're talking the third largest shire in Queensland.
Wow.
I think it's about 72,000 square kilometres. Right. And I think there's less than 300 people in that area. So they're relying not only on this golf course for their own residents, but also tourism.
Sure.
They're hoping that people will come into town, maybe stay an extra night or two, and hang around. So golf seems to be a bit of a flavour out here, with a lot of golf courses in these small towns. But theirs was just in a state of disrepair, so we've been working alongside the Shire and some volunteers to get the place back in some sort of shape.
Fantastic, mate. Now we'll see what information and details you can give us about the golf course, because that's what, when I saw this on your social media page, I was just like, where are you? And then once I looked at it, I thought, Thargomindah, I'm like, I've been near there. I've been out to Cunnamulla, and that's way out west, but you are even further. So I just want to detail a little bit of just where this is and a little bit about Thargomindah, mate, if you don't mind. I've done a little bit of research. So Thargomindah is about correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 1,000 kilometres straight west of Brisbane. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So I've done a lot of driving, and I'm sure people have as well, but it's Sydney to Brisbane to drive is about 1,000. Sydney to Melbourne to drive is about 1,000 Ks, and it's about an hour and a bit flight. That's the same distance as those drives. You are west into the country, in the middle of the country, away from Brisbane. That's staggering so far away.
Yeah,
Unreal.
It is. It's a long way from Brisbane. About 11-hour drive.
Yeah, right.
That's a couple of stops and a fuel stop. But
wow.
But it's a beautiful part of the world. I love the high skies and the red dirt, and you kind of, once you get to that Cunnamulla and beyond, you kind of get the road to yourself, and you really, it's a lovely part of the world. It's certainly remote. We talk about rural and remote and regional, but we certainly are probably in the realms of remote out here, and there's definitely, you can go beyond here to be even more remote. Yep. But we're about almost in line with Adelaide as well. So you can imagine we're on Brisbane time, and yet we're probably in line with Adelaide. So getting up in the morning, starting work 6:30, it's still a bit dark, and but it's a bit lighter in the evening, which I enjoy.
Yep.
It's one thing I do miss about being in Melbourne is daylight saving. So having that little bit of daylight after dinner is very nice, but it's something we're getting used to.
Very good, mate. Very good. Now, the town is on the banks of the Boolaroo River, which I've had a look. It's channel country, I think is what they call it out that way.
Yes.
And
that's right.
It looks pretty amazing. I'm a bit like you, mate. I've been out travelling lots of different parts growing up in my life, and that part of the country is just so beautiful. It's so magnificent. The colours and all that sort of stuff is staggering. There's not a lot of rain that falls out there. The average for Thargomindah, looking into the details of the BOM, that's the Bureau of Meteorology, is about 250-odd mil of rain for the year. Most of that looks like it falls around from November to March, about 30 mil per month, thereabouts. Probably comes down in some storms. You were saying to me just earlier, before we started recording, you had a few storms out there.
Yes, we arrived Sunday 11 days ago, and I was out at the golf course at that stage, watching the clouds come around and hearing some thunder, and of course checked my phone for what was going on with the radar, and little did I know that we're outside the radar measurement out here, so you can't see it, so you just go by sight. And I quickly got to the supermarket to grab some things for dinner, and it absolutely opened up. And what they were calling a gully raker swept through. It absolutely blew trees apart and debris everywhere, and 7 millimetres of rain, which then made, it was amazing, the roads in town, even the sides of the roads, puddles and running, what I'd say, creeks.
Yep.
From 7 millimetres of rain. So it's definitely flat country, and it gets pretty slippery and soft with that sort of rainfall. So it's slowed things down a little bit on the Monday, my first day of work. But we got there, and believe it or not, it's been high 30s, low 40s since. And so it's definitely dried out nicely.
Very good, mate. Very good. And one little tidbit I did find, just Googling and looking into Thargomindah, is an interesting thing. It was the first place in Australia to generate hydroelectric power, which sounds so bizarre, but it was through their bores. They just drilled down 800 metres in 1893 to find some pressurised water that then they put a little wheel on and dynamo and generated first place. You would never think anything like that would happen.
And there's a self-guided tour in town. We've gone and done it, and that actual generator's still here. So a little tidbit for you is they were the third city in the world to have electric lights in the streets.
I know, isn't that incredible?
Paris and London. So you can actually go and see how it all works here. And we were blown away by that. And they're still on bore water. It still smells. The water still comes out warm. They have to put it through cooling towers like many of these towns on the Artesian.
Yep.
The Great Artesian Basin, that is. They've got to cool the water. So certainly has a smell. When you turn the first thing you want to do is wash the dust off when you get home. And you turn the taps on, and all you can smell is that sulphur from the bore water. But
there you go.
Yeah, but the locals swear by it. They drink it, and They don't have a problem with it. We tend to bring our own water and fresh water just to drink. But, it's certainly a different thing out here.
It's a remarkable part of the country. So I mean, that gives us an idea, a picture of where you are, and it's just a magic part of the country for those that have never been. And if you look like you're travelling out that way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're on a holiday listening to this, just go out to Thargomindah and spend a bit of time. And now, before long, you'll have a golf course to play there very soon. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about some details of what you're doing on course. What's got to happen to it? What are you up to?
Okay, so the golf course is pretty much just let go. 6 years ago, I think the last attempt by volunteers to try and keep it up and going. So the course had a lot of weed vegetation and self-sown, quite a lot of self-sown trees that some are up to a couple of metres high by this stage.
Wow.
In areas of play. And the Shire, Thargomindah was, I believe, one of the last shires in Queensland to be deemed drought affected. So they were getting grants by the government, and the golf club house was being renovated, and the Shire felt at that time, we should probably do something with the golf course. And it's amazing how people ask what you're doing in town. As soon as you say we're getting the golf course up and going again, how excited they are. Because
that's unreal.
It used to be the social meeting point for so many families. The men would go out and play golf, and as sexist as this will sound, the women would stay, cook some curries and casseroles and things in the clubhouse, play euchre, and kids would run around. And then Sunday, that would be a Sunday morning, and then they'd spend the afternoon, they'd have a feed and social. So they say that happened. So many of the young, or when I say young, parents here in town say, yeah, we can remember doing that as kids, running around out there. So they're really, the golf course was obviously a real meeting point and socially, and that's what I've seen. I played the Outback Queensland Masters last year,
yes,
and travelled right out to Birdsville and around, and we saw that these small rural communities and remote communities, the golf courses are a social point for so many of the locals, whether they live on a station out of town or live within the town itself. So for us, that's why I've seen the importance of it. But for Thargomindah and the Bulu Shire, they've seen that for them, they want to get this golf course going. So when I turned up, tees were overgrown. You could see where they had been oiled, uneven. Animals have been digging, overgrown. They've got a sewerage, the effluent drain that runs through the golf course. You can imagine the amount of self-sown and weeds, and just fairways that hadn't been touched. So they were crusty, sealed up. There's no grass here.
Yep.
And yet they were the only club east of Toowoomba to have grass greens years ago on this line. They were very proud of that. But unfortunately, through time, the irrigation and the water quality is probably not good enough. So we're going back to sand scrape. So what it's meant is we've brought graders in, or when I say we, the Shire have bought the graders, bobcats, mowers, slashers, front-end loaders, and ultimately we've just started from scratch. And
wow,
the bones of it were there.
Yep. It's
now just the levelling, the smoothing, and reshaping.
So, in essence, with the golf course, now I had a look on Google Earth, and it's very hard to make out the golf course, right, the routing, but I think I kind of got it licked. I could see some of the old green locations, and is the drain you were talking about, is that across the 1st and the 9th that runs across about halfway along?
Yes.
And it goes sort of to the middle of the point. From the 1st, you go into the middle-ish, and then you come out the sort of south side of the next couple of holes, and you go north, and you go sort of northeast, and then you come back to 9 into the clubhouse a little bit, and a couple of little loops there from what I can gather.
Yeah.
For the fairway, so what are you trying to do? Then you talked about it. It's dry, right? So it's dusty. You're going to have sand scrapes. Ultimately, is what you're rebuilding in there. When you're clearing stuff, and is it going to be dirt fairways? What's a fairway going to consist of?
Yeah, so out here they consist of three real main things. They've got their clay pan, what they call their clay pan, which is where the red kind of real fine sediment sits. And then you have the black soil, as they call it, which gets real wet. Once that gets wet, you forget about it. You just don't go near it. It just gets real boggy.
Yep.
And then you've got these sand ridges. And that's what I found a little bit unique from this course to most of the sand scrape courses around. They've got a couple of these sand ridges. So the first green and the fourth greens both play to a sand ridge, and it's just straight sand. And literally something that, many a sandbelt club in Melbourne would absolutely love to have, because there's a bit of shape, a bit of movement, but it's this straight red sand. And then there's another couple of those further out. But then there's two holes in the trees, 7 and 8.
7 and 8, yeah, I saw them, yep.
And they're quite narrow. And like the 8th is very narrow. It would probably be at its widest point, maybe 28 metres wide, maybe 30 metres wide.
On Google Earth, mate, I was looking at it going, there's not a golf hole there. I think I've got that wrong. I'm looking at it going, it looks like there's a green, and the hole before goes all the way up there. Is there a hole in there somewhere?
Well, it's one of those ones you just got to take your medicine, tap a ball down the middle, but what makes it worse is that hole has got what we call gibbers, so those small round rocks.
Oh, okay.
2 pockets, one about 60 metres from the tee, and another one about 130 metres from the tee. So, if you're playing sand courses, the risk is you hit one of those gibbers, your ball could go anywhere. So you've really got to position yourself well, and then you've got quite a large green for what we see. The greens here are quite soft at the moment, and there is talk of rain this weekend, which will help pack them down before we treat them next week. But it's 2,880 metres for 9 holes, so it's a reasonable distance. Like the first hole is 535 metres.
Oh, really?
So
wow!
In the park, and so I've been roughing the fairways up. So I've been using a screed with different weights depending on what we're trying to achieve. And what I'm trying to give an effect that your ball's not just going to run and potentially into the rough or into the vegetation. So the idea is that your ball will bounce, run for a little bit and stop, with the intention to give you that, dare I say, turf feel.
Yep.
Now, some of the locals are saying you play it as it lies. Some are saying, no, you're allowed to tee up and all this sort of stuff. So we're really, that'll be at the mercy of the club themselves to decide that. But in our experience, it's always nice to have the opportunity to place your ball within a card length and all that sort of thing, which certainly in sand scrape golf gives you a little bit of, I don't know if it's an advantage, but it gives you some more joy in playing the game, that's for sure.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. It's well, look, that's really interesting insight, Dave, into what it takes to rebuild. What do the greens consist of in a modern-day sand scrape?
Okay, the greens at the moment, a lot of these are rock covered with sand, and that's been a little bit of a tricky part because I've been trying to flatten some of the greens out slightly to give a little bit more variation, because traditionally you either got very flat greens, especially on sand scrape courses in flat areas. The greens are very flat usually. These have been quite domed now. I'm trying to flatten some of them, give a little bit of variation so that when you putt, you've got a little bit of variation there. So they're in most cases, they're using the native sand that's here, the red sand. They treat it with oil. We're going to use a cottonseed oil here, and to treat the sand to give that surface. But the key is not to get that hard pan, so you can't over treat.
Yep.
It's just continually treating until you get the consistency you want. And if you start to get the hard pan, that's where you start to have your problems. So for us, they're quite fluffy at the moment, obviously with the works that are going on. And being no moisture, we've got no access to water on the golf course. So we're really reliant on some rain potentially this weekend, and then the oil mixture, which we'll use next week when we treat. So that's going to be exciting. I've never had to treat. I've certainly been involved in the process, but never actually been part of the process ourselves. So talking to Quilpie Golf Club up the road, which a Sandscrape, Cunnamulla is another one. We're just working towards getting the right equipment to treat. So then moving forward, the club here will have their own equipment to be able to treat the greens when they need to.
Yeah, wow. What a great, what an exciting project, mate. And you described it so well there, which is really interesting to hear from. I often talk about this, about how, and a lot of people who play golf in the cities don't really appreciate that regional remote life when you do have a small golf course in a small town, that people that live out of those towns on properties and that they come in, like you said, it's a focal point, it's a social point, it's a connection point for everyone to touch base and reconnect, because life can be so separating in those areas. And it's just so good to hear that that's there, and that the Shire Council are putting the energy and effort into rejuvenating the golf course at Thargomindah and making it something special again, making it something that people can get out there and enjoy again. I loved hearing that old story you're talking about of playing euchre and all that. That's just so cool. I love it.
Yeah, and that's the exciting part. And I actually, one of the old presidents, she came out and saw me. She'd heard I was in town. She gave me a scorecard and a membership tag that they used to issue, and she was very excited to think that the golf course would be up and going again. And from her point of view, she said on our open day we would get between 120 and up to 150 golfers.
Wow.
And that was because other communities would come and play their open day.
Yep.
And they would do the same. And that means driving 2-3 hours to go and play your neighbour's golf club. But they would do that. They don't see that as a long drive. And that's one thing I've noticed out here. To drive to Toowoomba for medical aid, they just do it. That's a day's drive. We just go and do it. We go Cunnamulla twice a week to get our groceries and our post. And it's so for them, it's not far to drive. But for us, in the city especially, you complain about a drive down to 7-Eleven to get a couple of litres of milk. That's 3 minutes away. But, I mean, literally the golf course here is a minute and a half out of town. It's close. They've got a clubhouse that's going to be renovated with a commercial kitchen and bar. And other than the footy club, it's the only other place you can have a function. It's the only other function.
Okay. There you go.
So it's really going to start to see some use. And it's out of town, so they can make as much noise as they like. It's going to upset the locals.
Yep. No, mate. Dave, that sounds incredibly exciting, and I've got no doubts by the time you're finished, mate, something that I'm sure you'll be proud of being involved with and helping a place like Thargomindah put their golf course back on the map, as it were. And, mate, it sounds like it's a really exciting thing to be involved with and helping them get this back up and running. So, mate, and you'll have to send me some photos so I can share these out, if you don't mind, of just some of the stuff that you're doing, because it'd be great to see the landscape and just give people an idea of what golf is like in these remote parts of the country, certainly up there in far western Queensland, where it is a really interesting landscape. So, Dave, I really appreciate you jumping on the podcast with me on Walking the Fairways and giving us an insight into what's going on, mate. It's really insightful, and I wish you well with the project and look forward to seeing the end of it.
Thanks, Steve, and appreciate the time.
Thank you, mate. Now, I have to give you a little update. That little short interview with Dave Mason about Thargomindah was recorded around about sort of 12 days ago and not quite 2 weeks ago. And obviously just recently, in the last 5 days, the rain that has fallen, or the last 7 days, I think, the rain that has fallen in Western Queensland, let alone all over Queensland yet again, has been absolutely staggering. It is essentially more or less an inland sea in Western Queensland and southwestern Queensland at the moment. And lots of remote communities, small townships, much like Thargomindah, have been cut off from other areas, been isolated by floodwaters. Some of them are underwater. It is just the river heights in those areas have gone well beyond their major flood level. And lots of the people who are fourth, fifth, and even sixth generation farmers in those regions have said that this is nothing that has been seen by anyone in living memory. So you're talking over 100 years ago that there may have been other events like this that have been recorded, but nothing in living memory. So quite staggering, absolutely devastating yet again for the state of Queensland. And the system that moves through also saturated southeastern Queensland. There's more rain up around Townsville. Yet again, lots of other areas in Queensland have just been hammered by so much rain. It's quite remarkable how widespread some of these rainfall totals are. And I got a couple of photos from Superintendent Richard Flesser at Lakelands on the Gold Coast, and he was showing me how much some of the areas around the golf course with the lakes that they've got on their course are up over into the fairways again and have risen up. So lots of localised flooding again, and we're seeing it so widespread. But ladies and gentlemen, like I said, southwestern Queensland, our thoughts are with everyone in those remote communities, the farmers in their remote properties that live hours from help, hours from neighbours, to see. And I'm going to put up a couple of photos that I've seen that I've recently been looking at that have been posted on social media from some of these property owners. The water is as far as you can see. It's like for hundreds of kilometres. It's underwater. It's just staggering. It really is. So, and with that, Dave Mason and his family were told to leave Thargomindah only, I think it was a few days after we had spoken, just because the forecast was that it was coming, and they got out with a few days to spare, and then, like I mentioned, the flood waters came through, and it's slow moving. So a lot of that water in the Channel Country of the southwest of Queensland moves through towards Lake Eyre, which is in the northeast of South Australia. It's like the basin of Australia, if you like. And it takes months to move across the landscape when it's that widespread and end up in Lake Eyre. So some of these areas, whilst water may come and go within a few days or even a week, some areas know it's coming, and it's a slow-moving, I suppose, disaster, if you like, for a lot of the remote communities. Lots of livestock lost as well. So our thoughts are with everyone in southwestern Queensland, and hopefully there's no more natural disasters up there, because it's just devastating to so many people. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we move to New South Wales, and news is that the 97-year-old Cogra Golf Club in the south of Sydney has closed its doors for the final time today, never to be reopened again. In 2016, the golf course at Cogra Golf Club had a chunk of its land taken by the WestConnex motorway project, which left it with a 15-hole golf course. A long time in the making, Cogra Golf Club has amalgamated with Liverpool Golf Club, which is further west in Sydney, and the two combined clubs will now be known as Oak Point Golf Club, which is utilising the Liverpool Golf Course there at Landsvale. So Cogra Golf Club is closed down. The club is closed down permanently, not to be used anymore. The site's going to disappear and it's going to become a commercial or an industrial area now. The club is reported to have received over $50 million for the site at Cogra. Liverpool Golf Club, as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, will now be known as Oak Point Golf Club. Now, the big one, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard about New South Wales Golf Club and La Perouse being reopened after wonderful Mackenzie and Ebert redesign of the golf course. Well, here is the second big one in Sydney, and that is the Royal Sydney Golf Club. Royal Sydney has officially opened its golf course this weekend, but unfortunately the golf course has remained closed. They weren't able to do any opening play because of the amount of rain that was received this weekend in Sydney. The Gil Hanse design is going to be something to behold. Now, this is the first Gil Hanse design in Australia, and what a way to do it at Royal Sydney Golf Club. I've been saying it for the life of this podcast that it's going to change the game in Sydney, and I've got no doubt that is exactly what is going to happen. Now, people and the industry will get a chance to see it completed. 15 months construction has been going on, which is remarkable for an entire golf course to be rebuilt. That's how long it's taken. There is a new name in town for the main 18-hole golf course of Royal Sydney, and it's been changed from the championship course. Now they're calling it the Bay course, because of course there's a little 9-hole golf course in the land there of Royal Sydney. So we can now say that the Royal Sydney Golf Course is to be known as the Bay Course. And that, of course, is a reflection of its location in Rose Bay in Sydney. Now, don't forget, Gil Hanse was appointed this project way back in 2016, and then there was all the court proceedings in the Land and Environment Court, quite literally for years, against those outside the club that didn't want to allow the club to conduct these works and this redesign of the golf course. Because there was a lot of trees to be removed and changed around. The landscape was going to be changed and really reverted back to the original type of vegetation that adorned this area of Sydney hundreds of years ago, long before it was suburbs and the part of Sydney. Because, of course, the eastern suburbs, ladies and gentlemen, if you might not be aware of this, it is entirely sand. In the early days, in 1904, for example, when the golf course was sort of starting to settle in its location of where it is today, they had a lot of issues up on the Bondi sand dunes, as they put it, at the southeastern end of the golf course site, where sand would just blow over the fairways, and they would lose fairways and sections of fairways and sections of grass because the sand drift. It was all sand. The entire eastern suburbs is sand. Underneath those suburbs, Rose Bay, Wallara, Bondi, around the cliffs, they're all sand. It's all what's on top of them. It's quite a remarkable landscape. Now, eventually, in December 2022, a long 6 years after the appointment of Gil Hanse, the court ruled, the Land and Environment Court that is, ruled in the club's favour, albeit with a few less trees able to be removed, because it was kind of starting to be considered a park. Well, it was. It was more of a parkland-style golf course with lots of large trees around it. Now, I can say, thankfully, that this was allowed to happen, and thankfully the Land and Environment Court ruled in the favour of the Royal Sydney Golf Club to allow this development to go ahead. Some of the details in the new golf course are the fairways and surrounds that are Santa Ana Couch, and the greens are Pure Distinction bent grass. Now, you've obviously, no doubt, if you listen to this podcast, you've heard me talk about these two particular grass types a lot, and I am certainly a big fan of Santa Ana Couch. And Pure Distinction gives an incredible surface. A number of golf courses now in Melbourne have Pure Distinction, such as Victoria Golf Club and Peninsula Kingswood, along with Royal Canberra, for example, moving as we move further north. Now, that's all well and good to have Santa Ana and Pure Distinction bent grass, but here's the extra cool part, in my opinion. You may or may not recall that in November 2023, as part of my time during a consulting gig at Blackheath Golf Club in the Blue Mountains, where they actually had a few greens constructed out of sand called Yolonga sand. Now, I went to the Yolonga quarries down near Gundagai, which is not too much further south than Canberra, for those of you outside New South Wales, if you're not sure where Gundagai is. Now, what I saw when I was there, apart from looking into the sand that was being used at Blackheath, James, who owns the quarry, showed me the piles of sand he had just begun blending for the Royal Sydney Golf Club back then in November of 23. Now, here's the thing about Yolonga sand, ladies and gentlemen. For those of us not near the Melbourne sandbelt, Yolonga sand is possibly as close as we in New South Wales can get to the type of sand of the Melbourne sandbelt. You see, it's an angular-shaped sand, meaning that unlike regular beach-type sand, which has a more rounded shape to each grain of sand, the Yolonga sand has more squared-off edges to it, if you like. Now, what that does is that when you walk on beach sand, for example, it falls away and your feet sink with each step and they move and move around a lot and start to fall away, right? And that's because each grain of sand rubs against each other. Like I said, because they're rounded grains of sand. Think of it like a kid's ball pit. If you try and walk on the balls in the ball pit, you just sink right to the bottom, right? Very quickly. You can't walk on top of the balls because they move around, right? They move around a great deal. Well, with Yolonga sand and its more angular shape, think about this. Replace those balls of the ball pit with small squares and pentagons and triangles. Now you would have to try and step in that pit of those angular shapes, and what do you think will happen? That's right. All the shapes will loosely lock into each other against all the other flat surfaces and angles of the shapes, and instead of sinking in the round balls, you'll be walking close to the top of all the shapes once they settle and lock into place. Now, this is a rough idea of how angular sand particles work. Now, the Melbourne Sandbelt is kind of similar to this. And then you add to that a small dose of very, very fine particles that fill in the tiniest of gaps, and hey presto, you have a moisture-retaining sand where the angular sand particles lock into place, and those fine particles, when they dry out in the sun, they can bake pretty hard too. Now, a couple of courses I know that have Yolonga sand greens are Royal Canberra, as I mentioned, Kalara Golf Club here in Sydney, Wagga City Golf Club down in the southwestern slopes of New South Wales. Blackheath Golf Club has 3 greens made out of Yolonga sand. Now, the quarry is closest to Canberra, so there may well be a number of golf clubs down that way that use Yolonga sand as well in Canberra. And I know that Pete Dunn, superintendent at Federal Golf Club, was telling me that they were doing some trials, but I can't recall exactly if they actually had any greens on course with Yolonga. But I know in Manuka Oval, for example, in Canberra, the AFL football field, that has Yolonga sand underneath it as well. So it's a very special type of sand. It's a very unique type of sand, and it's probably realistically our version in New South Wales, as close as we could get to something similar that's in the Melbourne Sandbelt. Now, what does that give you as a golfer? And this is where it really matters. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we can grow grass in beach sand if we want to, right? And hey, that's what 7 Mile is, okay? But what does a particular specific type of sand as Yolonga give to you as a golfer at Royal Sydney? Well, it gives you a firm and bouncy surface. And for a place like Royal Sydney, with their course team size and budget, they'll be able to finely tune those putting surfaces to the amount of bounce they want to provide for, say, a tournament. They can really specifically tune. So it's like with the great thing about a sand is you add the amount of water you want to achieve a certain amount of moisture content in the putting surface, right? And that then in turn will give you the amount of bounce you want, depending on the structure of the sand that you're given, that you're using. And because of the way Yolonga sands work, you can really produce a nice firm bouncy surface. And again, like I say, very similar to that of the Melbourne Sandbelt, which we've never really had in Sydney before, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very different. And the Yolonga sand is kind of new. It's kind of only about, I think, 10 or 12 or so years old to the industry in New South Wales. That's how long it's been available. Now, it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, before the men's or women's Australian Open is held back at Royal Sydney Golf Club. Now, in that, Royal Sydney has held the men's Australian Open the third most number of times in the Australian Open, in the men's Australian Open history, and that is at 15. 15 times it's hosted the men's Australian Open, with the last time being in 2016, when Jordan Spieth won in a playoff over Cam Smith and Ashley Hall. Then comes Royal Melbourne at 16 times in second place, with its last time way back in 1991, which was won by Wayne Riley over amateur at the time Robert Allenby. And the number one spot of hosting the men's Australian Open the most number of times is the Australian Golf Club in Sydney, hosting the national tournament at an incredible 22 times. The last one being, of course, just not long ago in 2023, when Joaquin Niemann won over Rikuya Hoshino. Now, the last time Royal Sydney held the Women's Australian Open was back in 2007, which was won by the great Carrie Webb by an unreal 6 strokes over Yun Jai Wei. That's just some of the details of the tournament history of Royal Sydney. Now, in terms of the architecture and the design as part of the construction of this wonderful new golf course that's at Royal Sydney, there was a lot of vegetation work done. There were a significant number of trees removed from the site, but don't forget, this is all on the sand dunes of the eastern suburbs, like I mentioned, which was originally home to the eastern suburbs Banksia Scrub local environment, which has long since been destroyed by all of the eastern suburbs themselves, like I mentioned. So over the years, as it became a very popular part of Sydney and now one of the wealthiest parts of Australia, there are very, very few areas indeed that are left of eastern suburbs Banksia Scrub. Now, the beauty about a project like this is that part of the redesign was to include planting and recreating the eastern suburbs Banksia Scrub environment and then foster its growth and the ecosystems it supports. Now, this is where golf courses come into their own. There is nowhere else in Sydney's eastern suburbs that is not already an existing national park where an environment like this can be reintroduced and survive on this scale. No council or government body has the ability or opportunity to do this. And yet there are those out there, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately and sadly in the community that wanted to stop this project from happening. And probably because they were ignorant and unaware of just what goes on. But hopefully they were educated through the process of going through the Land and Environment Court and everything that was put forward to be part of this project on the whole. Now, all of this new environment will be maintained and the maintenance paid for by the Royal Sydney Golf Club and not public funds. Now, tell me how this is not a win-win for the local environment. But unfortunately, there are those out there that will tell you this is not possible. Yet here we are. Now, Harley Cruz, golf course architect from Cruz Golf, as you know, and he's a landscape architect as well, has been involved from a vegetation and landscape architecture perspective. 250,000 local endemic plants as part of the eastern suburbs Banksia scrub environment have been planted on course to date, and over the next 2 years there will be an additional 250,000 more endemic plants installed. Now, by the time all the plantings have been completed, there will have been 500,000 new plants installed on the 18-hole site of Royal Sydney Golf Club. Now, that is very impressive indeed. The best golf courses in the world fit into and foster their local environment, not destroy it like many would have you believe. And again, that's why I say this is what makes golf courses so special. Congratulations, and a big congratulations has to go to Superintendent Adam Marchant and the entire team on course and the golf club of Royal Sydney for everything they have achieved with this redesign and rebuild. It's quite incredible indeed. Now, I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. This work will change the game for not only Royal Sydney in the Australian golf landscape, but it will change just what Sydney golf thinks it should be. This is the landscape that the golf courses of Sydney were originally built over 100 years ago, and it has been completely lost in that time, which I have discussed numerous times. Now it's coming back, and it has taken Royal Sydney Golf Club, Gil Hanse, Harley Cruz and Adam Marchant and the golf course team to make it happen. This new golf course, the Bay Course at Royal Sydney, has just changed Sydney golf forever in the most incredible way. And I, for one, ladies and gentlemen, can't wait to hopefully get an opportunity to see it. And I hope our industry and the broader golf industry starts talking about what's happened here at Royal Sydney from an environmental perspective, because it is very, very special indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, a great part about walking the fairways, as you know, is getting insight from other people on golf courses, superintendents on golf courses around the country. And this one, we're going into Melbourne, where I've got on the line Superintendent Brett Stuesser from Stathallan Golf Club at Bundoora in Melbourne. G'day, Brett. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
No, thank you, mate. Now, we've got a little bit of news to talk about that's going on there on course, and you've been giving me some information about this over the last, probably a few months, to be honest, mate, and you've been up to a bit of work there. Now, you're a public access 9-hole golf course that's in Bundoora, as I mentioned, and you're just to the north of La Trobe University in the north of Melbourne. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. We're right beside La Trobe Uni, and La Trobe Uni is actually our landlord, so they actually own the land and we lease it from them on an extended lease. So we actually work closely with La Trobe with a lot of tree care and kind of things like that around the course. So yeah, we're right beside the university.
Good stuff, mate. That gives people an idea of where you are in case they've not been there before and seen the golf course. And this is what we're here to talk about. So tell us a little bit about this work. You've just opened a new 6th green you've constructed there on course and your 7th tees. Tell us a little bit about what went on there for those couple of projects.
Yeah, so it's been busy probably 8 months, but we ran into the issue, which I think a lot of golf courses run into, where houses along the boundary become an issue. Yep. You know, when the course was originally there in 1957, there weren't any houses around. It was just paddocked. And so eventually the houses got built, the technology in golf got better, and they came into play. So the committee, myself, we were getting complaints from the neighbors, and because we're such a community-based club too, like, we wanted to respect that. And so we looked at our options of what we can do to reduce golf balls leaving our property, and we came to extending or taking down one par 4 and making it a par 3 and extending our 6th hole by about 100 meters. So with the committee on board and everything, we started coming up with a design, a layout, and like any, you got to start budgeting too. Now, a bit of the history of Strathallan, it's volunteer-run club.
Okay.
Myself and my employer, we're the only 2 employed staff on the course. The rest is volunteers. So you come into the clubhouse, you book your tea time. Those are volunteers. Yeah. So it's a community. It's probably one of the last, I would say, in Melbourne that's like this. So yeah, we do our best, and we came up with a budget, we scope of works, everything, and yeah, we got in. Started the construction this last winter, actually.
Yep.
So it's all been done in-house. The only thing we really got contracted in was lime planting, because we had 600 or 6,000 square meters of fairway to redo. And we actually had 2 fairways that were still kind of cool season grass, kikuyu, just a mixed bag. So we were like, well, let's transition those to Santa Ana Cooch, and as long with the extension of the 6. So we ended up doing about 2 hectares of fairways, which were lime planted. So that will actually make the whole course now Santa Ana Cooch fairways.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's a nice transition, because it just all matches. The amount of water I had to put on some of the cool season fairways was just, twice as much. And
sure.
Yeah, you get a dry summer like we had, it's just water, you need to save it. So, yeah, so a lot of the project, like I said, it was in-house, but we also had one community member. He's a guy we just met, and he needed to park his skid steer and his truck somewhere. And he runs a business, a earth moving business. And we're like, yep, you can park it in our parking lot if you want overnight. Anyways, he's gotten really into the golf course, and this project, we were telling him about it, and he's on board. So he helped us with the cutting out the cavity, shaping the bunkers. I was driving this, dumping loads of soil. It was a really community project and club project. So we finished the construction side in September. And we were trying to aim to get with the growing season. And so we ended up deciding to go pure distinction on the green itself, purely because we built a chipping green last year. And we used pure distinction there, and we got great results out of that. So, and there's no records of what our greens are. They're POA bent mix, but we have no idea what they are. Okay. So we didn't have anything to kind of match them up or, try to have the same blend. But we were starting fresh a little bit. So went the pure distinction. That seeded in really nice. We had one washout with a storm, which was a bit of a George Costanza looking bald patch in the middle. If anyone's out there, Seinfeld fan.
Massive Seinfeld fan here, mate. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we had that. It's surprising, washout, and how much work it is to then get that spot back up. Yeah. Well, we did. We got it back going. So we went pure distinction, and then for the surrounds, we just we scarified our fairways in the cleanest cooch spots we had. And we sprigged all the surrounds, and the fairways, we ended up spraying everything out. We got a power raked them all, which it's quite disruptive to the course. So we did have a bit of a reduction in some green fees kind of during this period, but the club was fully committed to it. You got to think big picture down the road, the water savings, and just the refresh it gives the course. The club was very much a long-term focus with this project, which was really nice. And we power raked it, and we line planted in about November. So in Melbourne, it's just ideal time, springtime. So got a pretty good strike rate with that, but you definitely learn where your irrigation deficiencies are as soon as you project like that. Now, in the winter, I did upgrade. I put some dual lines in some of the careways and fairways where I knew there was issues. But then you find out more issues. Just you don't quite get that full coverage, or you're running around with a hose.
Mate, it's great to hear that this community club, it's really central to the local area, and you're getting the great support, certainly from members, like you said, local people that happen to have earth-moving equipment that really get diving into the sport of golf and the community course that it is. And you get that support, it means you can improve the golf course, you're saving on water, you're saving in future headaches, if you were, with Santa Ana Cooch and your fairways. That's been upgraded, that's improving and growing in nicely. Then you've got this new green, Pure Distinction, one of the latest and greatest bent grasses available. You've done an efficient use of turfing or establishing turf on your surrounds by using sprigs that you've got from on-site areas. So not only is it a Santa Ana Cooch, but it's also a local established plant version of Santa Ana to your site. So that's better still. It's a cheaper way of doing it, which means it's cost effective for the club. And all these are upticks for the future of the course. Mate, this is all fantastic to hear.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a passion project for me. It's you definitely learn as you go. You realize, maybe that didn't work in that, but it's been a lot of fun. And we just had the opening last Friday, actually. So we had a bit of a celebration, a 9-hole event. Everyone that was involved, committee member, every volunteer, we all had them out on the first tee, and you had the honorary, you hit off. And it was a pretty special moment for the club because, they haven't built a new green, 93. And then all the other greens are like original 1957 push-up style. Like, this was a big moment. So, it did bring everyone together. And, I'm still, it was competition day today, and had a lot of positive feedback for the membership and a lot of smiles out there. So it was rewarding, definitely rewarding. So
fantastic, mate. That's really exciting to hear. It sounds like you're proud about bringing a new baby, in a sense.
Definitely proud
into the golf course there, and certainly, like you say, from the club, and the support and the passion from the membership is really great to hear. And it's, look, like I say, I like to expose this sort of stuff and talk to people about that in the audience that are listening, that are golfers, that are greenkeepers. Some people in the northern parts of Melbourne working on courses, and the golfers that probably haven't played on a new Pure Distinction green, for example, and even might not have played Strathallan for a long time, and now hearing about these improvements and where the club's going. And like you say, the passion from the local people. I can hear the passion in your own voice, mate, that you're there working on course and helping to bring this golf course out the best that it can be. Really, really exciting times, mate, and I'm glad that you're able to jump on the pod and let everyone know what's going on there at Strathallan, mate. I'm really pleased for you, and certainly pleased to hear that the club is moving forward in this way.
No, thanks, Steve. And yeah, it's a fantastic project, and appreciate your platform to kind of get little old Strathallan, a little bit of exposure, and tell the rest of Victoria and Australia, what's going on here, and what more of the country and small courses can kind of do when you put your mind to it. So it's a testament to the club and the heart of my colleague and everyone involved.
Fantastic, mate. Now, and just quickly off the side here, you mentioned that you've got a new apprentice on board.
I do, yeah. Just recently hired Ella. She's been fantastic, and she got to see the tail end of this project, and was still, very much in it. And she just brings a great amount of energy. And I've listened to your other episodes of the women turf and Cobram Baruga up there, and I'm definitely. I hope those applications still are available, because I'll be looking to sign her up for it. no, she's been a great addition to the team.
Mate, fantastic to hear more women getting into the career opportunities of greenkeeping, and hopefully we see Ella there with you certainly grow into her role there and grow into her career, and I'd love to hear more about her as she moves on and increases her time and starts her career off to a great start here at Stathallan with yourself, mate. So, Brett Stuesser, thank you so much for jumping on to Walking the Fairways and giving us a great insight into these fantastic projects and showing us and telling us about Stathallan, the 9-hole public golf course there in the north of Melbourne, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve, and take care.
Next, we go to Tasmania, and a congratulations has to go to Tom North, who is now the new superintendent at Royal Hobart. Tom was superintendent previously at the awesome 9-holer next door at Lanherne Golf Club. You've heard me mention that in the past on my day trip down to Hobart, and I caught up with Tom at Lanherne, and I was blown away not only by the golf course at Lanherne, and I have mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast, but also Tom himself. He's a fantastic young superintendent. He's got great passion, and he's very skilled at what he does. And now to see him taking on the role as superintendent at Royal Hobart, I think it's a fantastic move by the club at Royal Hobart and by Tom. And I look forward to seeing Royal Hobart improve under Tom's leadership. And ladies and gentlemen, a big congratulations to Tom North. Now we head all the way over to WA, to the west coast of Australia, Royal Fremantle Golf Club in Perth, and they've begun their greens replacement program, beginning on the 10th and 18th greens of the course. The club has scheduled the Anzac Day long weekend as opening day for the new greens, and they've been hooking into this work. So a great start there into Royal Fremantle Golf Club in Perth. And also Point Walter Golf Club in Perth have constructed a new 4th green. Lots of work has gone into this project at the 9-hole public golf course on the south side of the beautiful Swan River. A great addition to the course there in Perth at Point Walter, so look out for the new 4th green for when it opens up. Construction is now complete. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is another episode of Walking the Fairways, and don't forget to reach out to me on socials or on my social media at The Golfing Greenkeeper on Instagram and Facebook, or LinkedIn under Steve Smith. Or you can send me an email, thegolfinggreenkeeper@gmail.com, if you or your club want to share what you're up to and how you're improving your golf course, no matter where you are in Australia. Small club or big, it does not matter. I am here to share how you're improving and what you're doing to make your course better for all the golfers out there that enjoy playing golf. And it's also about exposing some of the unknown courses. Look, we're all golfers. We all have our little favourite golf courses here, there and everywhere, ones that we reminisce about, ones that we love to go and play from time to time, or ones that we play every week. And I just want to be able to help talk about who's improving, and it also highlights for people who like to enjoy travelling and trying different golf courses around where they might want to go and play next. So ladies and gentlemen, get in touch with me and let me know just what's going on at your club. Now also, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to partners of Walking the Fairways in Dint Golf Solutions and their footy tipping comp for both AFL and NRL. And check out their website for all the products that they've got available, hardware for your golf course, and of course, turf renovation equipment such as tines. Don't forget they have them available for you, the specialist tines. And they are available on the website at dint.com.au. That's dint.com.au. And also a big thank you to partners Colin Campbell Chemicals. And don't forget to check out their website for not only their Behind the Turf podcast, but also for their plant protection products that are available to you. And of course, the new one, don't forget about Chino for Pythium control. You can check out their details at campbellchemicals.com.au. Ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be lots of clickables in the show notes. Don't forget to check them out. And also, keep an eye out on socials for the extra information that's coming with some images and the like that you'll be able to go and check out just to refer to all the information that you've heard about in this podcast episode today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with it one more time. You hit him clean, we'll keep him green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.